Hi everyone, I'm Dr. John Douillard, and today I want to talk about drinking an immunity tea and what tea that you can drink at home that would be the best for boosting your immunity, and a whole lot more. And let me explain this. Viruses, when they attack us, they attack us through our epithelial cells, primarily in the respiratory tract and in our intestinal tract. Those are single cell layers of protection. They're called our protective barriers, of which we have four. We have our skin on the outside, respiratory skin, epithelium, intestinal skin, and the blood-brain barrier are the four protective barriers, which are really, really important. And the two that the viruses like to take out quickly and inject their genetic material into are the ones they come in contact first, which is your respiratory tract and your gut immunity. And studies show now, which is really interesting, is these two interesting things that you ought to know, is that the health and integrity of your gut is directly linked to gut immunity, which is directly linked to respiratory immunity. They've just recently discovered that as gut immunity goes up, respiratory immunity goes up. As respiratory immunity goes down, gut immunity goes down. Those two microbiomes are intimately connected. Now, they never knew that there was a microbiome in your respiratory tract. In fact, for many years, they thought the respiratory tract was sterile. But it isn't sterile. It's full of bugs and it's got its own microbiome that is intimately kind of a bi-directional pathway between your gut and your lungs and your gut. So when we talk about these teas for your gut, these are also teas that have been classically used for your lungs for thousands of years. And there's really interesting and good science to talk about that I want to share with you that really may help you understand this a whole lot better. So the gut, the lungs, they're intimately connected. The skin that lines both of those are our first protective barrier. And if that's not healthy and strong, then we become more vulnerable to a viral attack. This may be the reason why kids under 9 years old, I don't think there has been to this date yet any kid under 9 who's got this particular virus. Now that could be for a host of reasons. One being that their skin is just incredibly different. Like they have, 8-year-old skin. And 8-year-old skin looks a whole lot different than my skin, or maybe your skin, right? It's just different. And you got to remember always that what you see here is what it is going on the inside as well. So if your skin on the outside is looking aged, then your skin on the inside is going to be the same, therefore more vulnerable, therefore less protective as a barrier, and it is the two main protective barriers in our body, right? So it's really important. So maybe that's the reason why some other folks say melatonin is a factor. Kids make more melatonin. They sleep like really deep and forever than we do as we get older. That's for sure a factor, and I've written articles about melatonin. Melatonin was in my article on my immune protocol, because decrease in melatonin and circadian imbalance is completely linked to immune issues and compromise for sure. So making sure that's up as well could be another factor. And I do believe taking melatonin before you go to bed now is really a smart idea because of the immune boosting benefit. And it's also a powerful anti-anxiety agent, according to the studies. It actually outperformed an anti-anxiety medication, believe it or not, for people who were going into surgery and they were anxious about the surgery. They didn't know. They were worried about it, and they took melatonin or an anti-anxiety agent, and the melatonin actually worked better. So pretty crazy science about that as well. But whatever the reason is, we know for sure that the intestinal lining is really important. So there's one thing that Ayurveda always understood. It was the protection of your respiratory and intestinal lining. It's very vulnerable to vata. Vata means dryness. So if your intestinal tract or respiratory tract gets dry, there's going to be a reactive mucus production that takes place as a result of being dry or irritated. And cold, dry air of the winter is vata aggravating, which makes us more vulnerable to succumbing to microbial events or immune events during the winter and early spring months, right? So this is something we've known for a very, very long time. So Ayurveda would suggest to take certain teas that were rich in soluble fiber, like chia and flax and oatmeal and slippery elm and marshmallow root and licorice. Now we have a tea called the Slippery Elm Prebiotic Formula, which is licorice, slippery elm, and marshmallow root. And you can make it into a decoction and boil it down from 2 quarts to a half a quart, make it into a medicine that I use for really severe digestive concerns. But in this regard, you can just take a teaspoon and make it into a tea and brew it like a tea as you like. And what that does is it powerfully boosts something called butyrate or butyric acid. Well, butyrate or butyric acid is really important for your gut and lung immunity, according to the studies. And I've written an article about this that's coming out very soon. So please stay tuned on my newsletter or my blogs that are coming out at LifeSpa.com. Sign up for that because you'll read the science. It's mind-boggling science, and this new research of understanding the connection between the microbiomes of your gut and your lungs is crazy. It's really exciting and interesting. So this tea has been shown to increase butyrate. Well, butyrate is the #1 driver of energy for the cells in your intestinal tract. It is the #1 food for the good bugs in your intestinal tract, and it is the #1 driver of gut immunity. So if the butyrate is not available for you, then you're not going to have the gut immunity, and gut immunity is linked to the lung immunity, and so they both go together, right? So butyrate is also a very important thing, so important that your body literally has bugs that make ghee or make butyrate in it. So in other words, like Clostridium butyricum is a microbe that literally makes butyrate for a living to keep the intestinal tract healthy, which is really important. Well, ghee, as I just mentioned, is the highest food source of butyrate on the planet, right? So it's the highest food source of butyrate on the planet, which is crazy, I think, that Ayurveda knew to take milk and to boil off all the milk solids, get rid of all the dairy aspects of it, and just use the actual short-chain fatty acid, the highest source of butyrate on the planet, and feed that in your body. And we use it in our cleanses, and we use it for cooking because it's heat tolerant, but it's also feeds your intestinal tract with this very, very important short-chain fatty acid, right? So it's really, really important. So what you could do with your slippery elm licorice marshmallow root tea, and we have it, we sell it in a container that's chopped. So just so if you know, if you want to buy this on your own, you get slippery elm marshmallow and licorice, and you want to get it chopped, not ground, because if you're trying to make tea with the ground version of that, you make mud. And we've done that, and that's why we carry this product, because you can't find it anywhere. You can find it chopped to ground very easily, but it's hard. So that's why we carry it as the Slippery Elm Prebiotic Formula. So what's really interesting about this is you take that tea, take a teaspoon, brew it like a tea, but then take a teaspoon of ghee or a half a teaspoon of ghee and put that in there and blend that up. Sort of like a bulletproof version of your coffee, but this is now something that actually is really demulcent, healing, repairing, nourishing for both your lungs and your intestinal tract and the immunity that resides in both. Really, really important. So a little bit of ghee will give you more of that butyrate in your intestinal tract. The slippery elm and the slippery elm and the licorice, and by the way, triphala, if you guys use triphala, in a study that showed that those three, 2 of which are in our formula, marshmallow's got other properties, but the slippery elm and the licorice have been shown to do a couple of amazing things for your respiratory tract and your gut. #1, they increase the proliferation of good bacteria in your gut. They resist the proliferation of bad bacteria in your gut, and they increase these short-chain fatty acids, these butyrates in your body that are directly linked to gut and lung immunity. So I call this the immunity tea because now you're taking it with the slippery elm, the marshmallow and licorice. And marshmallow is a powerful demulcent. And demulcents are things that are slimy, and they're soluble fiber in nature. And soluble fiber is like anything that you put in water and it dissolves in water and becomes slippery and slimy, like oatmeal is a great example of soluble fiber. And what soluble fiber does, not only does it attach to the bile that takes the bile to the toilet. So if you don't have enough soluble fiber in your diet, the bile, up to 97% of it, can get reabsorbed back to your liver. And think of bile like a Pac-Man, like gobbling up all these toxins and impurities in your liver. Eat some fatty food, that bile goes into your intestinal tract, cleans and scrubs your little villi, gobbles up all the toxins, undesirable guys, attaches to the soluble fiber bile like your oatmeal or your flax or your chia or your slippery elm or your licorice or marshmallow root, takes it to the toilet. But if you don't have enough of that in your diet, 97% of that, according to a physiology textbook called Guyton's Physiology, which is like the classic medical textbook for physiology, 97% of that goes back to your liver, dumps all of its toxins in your liver into your blood, and now you're like, whoa, what's going on? And I've written a lot about the mechanics of bile and liver function in your intestinal tract in many articles about liver and gallbladders. You can go there for more information. But you don't want that, right? You want to make sure that the bile is being taken to the toilet. And then the soluble fiber also is eaten by the little bugs in your gut because they love it. And what the bugs make as a result of that is they make butyrate. They make ghee in their own sort of. They don't actually make ghee, but they make butyrate, which ghee is the highest food source of butyrate that we know of. So pretty cool stuff. So the slippery elm and the licorice and the triphala as well, and that's really good for elimination because you don't want to have constipation during this time either, are all designed to, or have been studied to do that. Increase the good bugs, get rid of the bad bugs, and increase your butyrate production, your short-chain fatty acid, which actually feeds your microbiome and supports the health and integrity of the gut and lung immunity. So really, really important stuff. So think about getting the slippery elm prebiotic tea, adding a little bit of ghee to it, and make your gut and lung immunity tea. All right, so that's it for this week. Stay tuned for the article, which cites all this really brand new, interesting science about lung and gut immunity being linked together. And I'll see you guys next week. And thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard.